Hi, I'm. Do you suffer symptoms of depression? What about OCD? Are you plagued with thoughts of what you did to that man in '97? Well, then maybe psilocybin could be the treatment for you. Except it probably won't be, because a lot of research was halted in the '70s. Thanks, Nixon.
The year is 1960, and the hippie era has emerged. Thoughts on hippies?
Okay, don't care for them.
So hippies, in the 60s and 70s, I think they had it right.
The hippies were all about love, sex, and psychedelics.
Yeah, I think the hippies were really the first generation of baby boomers. Their parents had worked through the Great Depression and World War II. They were very much looking forward to a middle-class lifestyle, and the people that grew up in the 50s and went to college in the 60s were very indulged and very selfish.
I think it'd be a better world if the hippies continued being hippies and started to actually go into politics and actually do things. And if we went back to those days when it was just all I don't know, frolicking in the woods. I don't know. Sorry. Yeah, that's all.
Okay. It was counterculture, meaning it opposed many societal values as well as authority. The authorities, the government, weren't fans of this. Eventually, it all accumulated into the war on drugs under President Nixon.
When crack cocaine became very popular in urban settings. And the mandatory sentencing that people who were accused of using and selling crack cocaine led to a huge increase in the number of people incarcerated, and most of those being people of color. So that's really expensive, and it definitely hurts the productivity of the country to have so many people in prison, and it devastates inner city communities as well to have so many people removed from their families and their loved ones. So I would have to say its effect has been completely negative and very discriminatory as well.
I do think that if we as taxpayers can spend money to force people to stay in prison for things that they have done, that we can take that same tax money and treat people for drug addiction and get to the root of the problem. That many drugs, specifically these ones, I don't think should be, we should not criminalize or demonize people, that we should get people treatment that need treatment, and that the war on drugs statistics have failed, and we need to treat the problem. The addiction is not a crime, and that's my opinion based on a lot of data.
This war had many causes and effects, but one less spoken about was the disruption of research on psychedelics, namely mushrooms.
What do you know about shrooms?
What do I know about shrooms? I know they're mushrooms, I know they are hallucinogenics, and I know they are a natural occurring item in the world, forest, woods, I don't know.
Yeah. In Iceland, you can go out and pick them freely because they grow in nature.
Some misconceptions, I think, are like it's a hippie type of drug that was used in the 60s and 70s, and then maybe more modern uses would be at raves or parties, and that I think, and I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, but that people would jump off of buildings or completely do wild stuff while under the influence of possibly LSD or mushrooms.
Shrooms, or scientifically psilocybin, are hallucinogens. They alter sense, perception, and can even make long-term changes to brain chemistry. They have the ability to affect an individual's neuroplasticity, and thus allow their brain to form new neural connections. Psilocybin is legally classified as a Schedule I drug, meaning the government considers it at high risk for abuse and doesn't allow it for medical use on a federal level. Is this a fair designation, though?
I don't think that, I mean, the idea of making something illegal when it's a natural growing product, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me anyway, but if it helps people medicinally in particular, then I don't think it should be done. I think that, prescribing it could be helpful.
It's like a rewiring of your brain, of your thoughts, in a way. And so that is, potentially harmful. It's also potentially harmful to the status quo when people are tripping and finding new ways of thinking. I think, and that's sort of that unknown area is why it was made into, a Schedule I drug where it was completely restricted and couldn't even be, prescribed by a doctor.
I don't know this, but I mean, I don't know that a hallucinogenic of that nature is addictive.
I don't think it is.
I mean, it could be psychologically addictive, I suppose.
Well, yeah, I think the routine, I think the experience, but I don't think the actual, it's not like nicotine or something where you need,
right, or like
have a withdrawal from it.
Right, or like an opioid or something.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Medicinal use, I know that in some cultures, and maybe it's not exactly mushrooms or LSD, but you would go to a shaman and go on a journey to kind of purge some inner demons that you may have, but that is, and I'm not recommending that, I am saying that that is a practice for some cultures, but it is in a medicinal way. I believe today that research shows possible microdosing with a doctor could be a form of therapy to work through past trauma that might be subconscious, and being able to do it with a doctor to overcome lots of pain and trauma could be used in a medicinal way. With all of this said, I would highly recommend anybody is an adult with a fully formed brain.
Microdosing, that's a thing now. Putting it in tea. Actually, it's legal. It's legalized because it does help a lot of anxiety and depression.
It does. Yeah, I know that. I know about microdosing. I know that it.
Have you microdosed?
No, I have not.
No.
Okay, well, if it helps people who are suffering from severe depression become undepressed and therefore productive, obviously it's a good thing for the economy as a whole, and for that individual specifically as well. It would be of enormous benefit to that person, right? And if pharmaceutical companies make a profit producing these drugs, then I see that as a good reason for them to make them. And if there is a profit to be made and these drugs are produced and legally distributed to people who have actual medical conditions, then that sounds like a win-win for me. I mean, the economy as a whole wins, the pharmaceuticals win, the people feel better, they win. So yeah, I don't see a downside.
With any drug, there is of course always the chance for abuse, addiction, and other adverse side effects, even if the likelihood is almost non-existent. But in recent years, studies on psilocybin have shown promise. The effectiveness rate of treatment in clinical studies has quickly increased in recent years.
Psilocybin showed promise in treatment of treatment-resistant depression, obsessive-compulsive disorder, nicotine addiction, alcohol addiction, anorexia nervosa, behavioral disorders, and even anxiety, especially in patients with terminal illness.
Psychedelics are definitely not a cure-all for mental illness, and you should always speak to a professional instead of attempting to self-medicate. even with the promising future of medicine with psilocybin, it is still paired with forms of talk therapy or other treatments, like with any other medication for mental disorders. An open mind is the key to further progression in this field. While the hippies in the 60s and 70s were intense in their ways, their foundation of openness wasn't entirely wrong. Repurposing that view of openness to instead support research on psychedelics as prescribed medications will lead to even more advances in the pharmaceutical industry, and in the grand scheme of things, society as a whole.
I grew up with people who experimented with psychedelic drugs, including LSD, and one of them told me that that after he took LSD, that his whole perspective on life changed. And I said to myself, well, I like my perspective on life, and I don't want it to change, so I think I'll choose not to ever do that. So if you're looking for somebody with experience, you're talking to the wrong guy.
Oh, so I did actually try microdosing tea. I tried that, and it actually did, like, you know, I would compare it to an edible that I don't take.
Which you're very, very familiar with.
No.
So, do I have experience with shrooms or any psychedelics? I'm not going to answer that question because I don't actually know if it's illegal or not. So, yeah, that's probably not a question.
I believe in Oakland specifically it's decriminalized.
Yeah, it's decriminalized. So decriminalization, it means that they, you know what, it's still on the books as a crime, but we're not going to arrest you for it.
Yeah.
So until I know different, you know, like, okay, you know what, it's okay, go for it. You know, I'm a teacher. I gotta be careful. So not gonna say anything.
No comment.
No comment. Yes.
I think that's a good question for Tobin. Have you done any hallucinogens?
I answered that question.
He answered that question.
Did you tell her about the camel?
No, I did not. But after this interview, I'm sure she would love to hear about your camel sex joke.
Oh, do you,
What?
do-